So let's take a look at how we actually use lists now that we've done that piece. And if I go back to ng2 file upload, we'll go to the next link and we'll take a look at the Angular file upload, which gives us the documentation here. And this is the kind of thing that we're going to get. We're going to be able to drag and drop things into a drop zone. We're going to have an upload queue. We'll get progress of our file being uploaded. And then we've got the TypeScript code and the markup that we're going to need here. Now we're going to cheat a bit, and because there's a bunch of HTML, then we're effectively going to copy some of this. And we're going to copy from line 17 down to line 116. We're going to copy this code into our clipboard and we're going to paste it into our photo editor component HTML. So just below our existing div, I'm just going to say ng file upload and use the comment shortcut and then paste in the code that we got from there. Now there's going to be a bunch of errors because we're going to need to import various things. We've got a bunch of ngIf directives inside here. We've got an ngStyle directive. We've got a number pipe. We've got an ng4. We've got an uploader we need to account for, and we've got an ng class, and we've got a property for has base drop zone over, and another one there. So that looks like a lot of hard work, but it really isn't that bad. And unlike in other lessons where I've used the built-in control flow, I think the path of least resistance is to use the directives just as they are now and just import the ng4 and the ngIf into our component rather than adding if blocks all around here. So we'll take that approach, and inside the imports I'm going to add the ngIf that we get from Angular Common, and I'm going to add the ng4 again from Angular Common, and I'm going to add the ngStyle from Angular Common and the ng class also from Angular Common. And we also need the file upload module that we get from ng2 file upload. So that would have solved some of the warnings, and if we go back and take a look, we've still got some, mostly around this upload. That's something that we need to create. So let's go back to our component. And inside our component, we're going to need access to our account service, as we need to send up or get hold of our user to send up the token directly from this. So I'm going to specify the account service equals inject and the account service. And then we're going to create a property for the uploader and make it optional and say file uploader as its type. And we're going to create a property for has base drop zone over, and we're going to set that to false. And we're going to set our base URL inside here, and we're going to get that from our environments file. And please double check which one it's used. We need the one from environments./environment and specify the API URL. And we also need to implement the on init inside here. So I'm going to say implements on init. And then we can create our ng on init function. And we need to accommodate a few things here. We need a file over base function for one of the drop zones. When we've got this function here, we need to create this, and I'm going to remove the second one anyway, so let's just remove that so we don't have to deal with those errors. And inside our components, we'll create the file over base, and this just takes an event of type any, and we just need to say this has base drop zone over equals e, the event, and then we're going to initialize the uploader. And this is going to be a function, and we're going to say list.uploader equals new file uploader, and we'll open parentheses and curly brackets, and then we just give our settings to this. So the URL, where's this going to be uploaded to? Well, that's going to be this.base URL plus, and then users /add dash photo. And then we also need to specify the auth token. This is separate to our normal HTTP requests using this component. So we need to specify the auth token, and we're going to specify bearer, add the space, and then say plus this dot account service, the current user, and the token. Then we're also going to say is HTML5, and we're going to specify true. We're going to allow file types, and we're going to specify that we're going to allow just image in this one. We're going to say that we want to remove it after upload and set that to true. We're going to say auto upload and set that to false. We're going to make the user click a button to do that. And we're going to specify a max file size of 1 megabyte. So that's going to be 10 multiplied by 1024 multiplied by 1024. And not 1 megabyte, sorry. 1 megabyte is 1 times that, and 10 megabytes is what we're actually going for. So if you try and upload an 11 megabyte file, then that will not work. And that will do for initializing. And inside the initialize uploader, we also need to say list.uploader. And in the event on after adding file, we need to specify file, and inside here we need to say file and with credentials equals false. And we need this because we're sending up our authentication in a header rather than using cookies, so we disable file with credentials there. And then we're going to say list.uploader and what to do on success of an item being uploaded. And inside here we'll say equals, and then the parameters for this are the item, the response, the status, and the headers. And we'll add the arrow function here, and we're going to get hold of the photo from the response. So I'm going to say const photo equals json.parse and the response, and then we'll say this.member dot. And what do we use for this? Because this member property, if we go and take a look at this property, is actually an input. And this input is effectively read-only, as in we shouldn't update this, or at least not directly. And technically we can, I guess, we can say this.member.photos, we've got access to this, and we could push an image in there. And sure, technically that would work, but it's not really the right way to go about things, and it may cause us problems later on. What we should do, because we want the original member, where are we getting this from? Well, we're getting this member property from our parent component. We actually need to update the member in our parent component, and then that change gets pushed down to this child component as its input property. So that's the approach we'll take. And we've taken a look at this earlier on. And in order to do something that affects the parent, because the member is in our parent component, then we need to utilize an output property. So I'm going to specify member change equals, and we're going to use an output that we get from Angular Core, and we'll give it a type of member. And then we can utilize the member change and emit an event when our member has changed. So let's take a look at how we do this, and let's scroll back down to where we've uploaded our photo successfully, and we've got the photo as the response, and we can now do something with it. So I'm going to create a copy effectively of the member and put it in a const called updated member, and I'm going to set this equal to and open curly brackets, and I'm going to say this.member. And with parentheses because it's an input property, but it's a type of signal. And then with the copy, I'm going to say updated member.photos.push and pass in the new photo. And then we can emit the event. So I'm going to say this.memberChange.emit, and we're going to emit the updated member. Now, because this is an output property, we need to do a couple more things. We'll need to go to our member edit component. So we'll go to our member edit component.ts, and we just need a method inside here to do something when the member changes. Now the member inside here is just a normal class property. It's not a signal, and we're getting this from our API effectively and then storing it in this property. So we can do something in here to affect that property, and inside here we'll create a method called onMemberChange, and because we're receiving this from an event, we'll call it event, but it's effectively going to be a type of member. And then we can say list.member equals events. And that's what we need to do from the member edit component side of things. And then in the member edit component template, where we've got our photo editor, we can then use that output property. So inside here, if we add parentheses, then we can see the member change. That's the event that's being emitted from our photo editor. And then we can call the onMemberChange, and in parentheses, this takes an event, and we'll use $event to pass the new member or the updated member to effectively the parent component, which then is going to update the member input property, and then we'll see that reflected in our photo editor component there. And then we can initialize the uploader. So inside the ng-on-init, we're just going to call this, and we're going to call our new initialize uploader function. So that takes care of the component configuration, and next we'll take a look at reducing this seemingly significant number of errors in our photo editor component, and we'll take a look at that next.